Welcome to Your Unique Brilliance podcast with Nicola, bringing you a weekly fresh flow of guidance, inspirations, powerful tips, and conversations designed to help you create your vision, discover your greatest diamond potential, and begin living the life you want. This is about empowering your truth, your choice, and your voice. Hello and welcome back to Your Unique Brilliance podcast with me, Nicola Salter. And today I am very delighted to introduce you to Maria Banks, who is a leadership and business coach empowering women. Welcome, Maria. It's so good to have you.
Oh, so good to be here. Thank you, Nicola.
Well, let me just introduce you. Maria's got over 25 years experience in making a difference, and she has over 12 years experience in developing and implementing highly successful change management and performance management strategies in the European energy sector. She's also created Strada Innovation, which was created in 2004, her business, to work with a wide range of leading organizations, business leaders and business owners. And since then, she shared her knowledge and skills designing and delivering programs for individual business and life coaching, leadership coaching, business transformation and change, performance management, coach skills and training. She was also featured in the Sunday Telegraph, which is a very prestigious UK newspaper. And Maria is based in England. She now lives in Cornwall in England. And she's going to share with us really her steps in terms of her courage to be brilliant. And Maria, before we begin diving into your journey in the corporate world and how you got there and what you've achieved is absolutely amazing. There were some things in your life that took place that while you were going through these things, you probably didn't think you'd end up where you've ended up today. And I would love for our listeners to learn more about you as we hear about your journey prior to your corporate world and your business.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you say that. It seems almost like another life when I look back, because it all kind of went wrong in my first marriage, and right from the very start I knew it was not the marriage for me. It was not the partnership for me. But as always, we try to make the best of it, and I carried on thinking that things would get better, and had two wonderful sons. And then realized once I'd had them that this really wasn't for me or for them. So I took a huge leap and made the decision to move on from the marriage. It was my decision, so it didn't go down too well. So for a few years, I was a bit discombobulated, trying to, make a new life for myself and for my two boys, who at that time were 4 and 6. So very, very tiny boys. And also wondering how they might feel when they grew up that I made the decision, to leave their father. So big responsibility. Also, my family were very worried. But, everything started to fall into place. Everything just started to fall into place once I became quite familiar with the fear, and went with the fear and thought, well, nothing can be as bad as it was before.
Right. So, and I mean, you don't have to dive into too much detail, but I understand it's a little emotionally abusive, and there were, you had an Italian background, your family were Italian, and there was strict, thoughts and beliefs around marriage, I would imagine. Yeah. And for you to take this step and move away from that, the union must have been a huge shift for them too. And I remember you sharing with me that, part of the fear was because you basically didn't have anything to go into. You knew you were unhappy, but you hadn't really had a career yet. You hadn't even started looking at what that might be.
No, yeah. Coming from an Italian family, I was married at 19. My first son was born at 20. My second son was born at 22. So no, I'd always wanted to go to university and never got the opportunity. Right. So, settled down into a marriage, which I felt, I guess looking back, but I felt was the right thing at the time. Nobody gets married thinking they're ever going to get divorced. Right. But it very soon became evident that this was not, my instinct was like, this is not right. It's not the right path for me. It's
Hmm.
not who I'm meant to be.
Right.
So I've always had this really strong sense of self-worth and self-respect. So, if I was being disrespected and
Mm.
disrespectful towards, I couldn't accept that. So that kind of made the marriage a bit worse.
Okay.
But it kind of, I felt really powerful within myself and just clung on to that and hung on to that.
That's
So,
that's that's
yeah,
amazing, because I think there's still a lot of women who probably are listening in now who might be in similar situations and know that they have that confidence within them, and that there is a courage, but it's just taking that step, isn't it? And stepping into the unknown that can be so daunting.
yeah, I say it's not easy. It's not easy if you make it hard. Um,
Ah.
yeah, it is about saying, well, if you keep saying to yourself, oh, this is too hard, this is too difficult. My dad would say to me, so how are you going to manage? I'd say, I really don't know.
Mm,
And all the questions that he asked me, I had no answers to, but I just knew that I was going to be okay, that I would make it work.
mm,
um, and I did, and the opportunities then just came to me, um, just naturally, really naturally. And I had a lot of fun, a lot of fun,
uh-huh.
going through the process. So I think laughter and happiness, just being happy with who you are and where you come from, even though
Hmm.
my parents were very strict Italians, being the eldest in the family too,
Mm,
you know, um, it was really about my own self-belief.
mm.
Um, and,
Self-belief
and
and growth mindset too, by the sounds of things. And let's, before we jump into those opportunities that came to you, because as you were leaving your marriage and moving into this new phase of your life, um, when we talked earlier, you'd had some experiences prior to that as a living in an Italian family in the UK. You'd had a couple of experiences where you'd been kind of yanked out of your environment and plonked into another environment very quickly. And it seemed to me that some of these experiences you had were the beginning of your growth mindset, and including leaving the marriage, that have enabled you to move into empowering women and where you're at today. What happened when you were younger to help you? You were shifted out of
yeah,
um,
yeah,
your school, what you was familiar to you,
yeah.
and
It was really interesting because, I go to school and I was English
mm,
with my English friends and girlfriends and boyfriends. And
mm,
I'm talking senior school, obviously. And then, I'd go home and it would be Italian because we would speak Italian and eat Italian food, which was always really strange because, my family was always very welcoming. But I lived in fear of anybody staying for dinner because, we had what I what I would term as funny food.
funny
You know,
food.
we didn't, we didn't have steak and kidney pie and like we had at school,
Uh-huh.
dinner school. We had like spaghetti and pasta and all
All
the
the
things
good
so
stuff.
trendy. Yeah, yeah. But in those days, you got spaghetti out of a tin here in the
That's
UK. So
right.
hula hoops or whatever. So yeah, I was afraid, and it was so funny because as I grew older and I shared this with some of my cousins, they all felt exactly the same, but we never shared it with each other. So
No.
yeah, it was hilarious. But yeah, my parents decided when I was 14 that they wanted to go back and live in Italy, and it
Hmm.
was a great decision for them, not such a great decision for me,
No.
because I arrived, I had to leave all my friends, and at that age it's really quite difficult,
Mm,
and go to a country where I really didn't speak the language very well at all. It was mainly dialect, and having to go to school and
mm.
all of that. So I did my best. So for the next year I really knuckled down and did really quite well, and then they decided to come back to the UK.
Oh
So
no. So you went through all that. You learned Italian, but how marvelous is that?
yeah,
You had to study in Italian, and then they decided to come back.
they did, but not
Okay.
back to the same school or the same town. It was a completely different
Oh,
town.
another one.
Yeah,
Wow. So you're constantly, I mean, and when we look at our neuroplasticity in our brain, it's always changing. So you were
yeah,
constantly having changes and changes of experience to help you grow. So I can see why then, as you got into the marriage and decided to leave the marriage, that you were finding within yourself that you had the power because you'd had previous experiences when you were younger to show you that, to prove you that, to
Yeah.
prove
Yeah.
to that to you. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you can you look, I look back and when I talk to my friends and
mhm,
colleagues, and when I tell my story, it's always
mhm,
interesting that you can look back and say, oh well, that created a shift in me that at the time, wasn't so evident. Now I realize, I look back. I mean, I was very bullied at school, when I came back from Italy, because
were you?
there here I was, the
Oh,
new girl in the school. So it was really quite difficult to make friends,
mhm,
because everybody had got friends.
mm.
So, standing up to someone who decided that, she wanted to punch my face in
Oh,
was actually quite hard, but I did,
uh-huh.
and survived,
Yeah.
Um, and actually, she didn't, in the end, she didn't actually,
Oh,
she wasn't actually violent with me, but she made sure that, I was aware of who was in charge.
mm. So I
Um,
mean, and this bullying still happens today at certain levels, but I do feel that just as you said, when you feel that empowerment within you, and even at that age, and speaking up and standing up, and even if it takes everything you've got to do that, um, it's building that stepping stone, the foundation for empowerment, and not allowing anyone, making the choice not to allow anyone to influence you, and to actually sometimes just step out of the way, and remove yourself from that situation. So, yeah, as you were, I can hear this, and this, courage that all of us have, this courage to be brilliant, is within all of us. And I'm just really fascinated hearing, like you said, your colleagues were, about the steps that, happen to us in our lifetimes that bring us to where we are today. And, as you were moving up into looking at for work after your marriage, so we'll go to that place now, in terms of interviewing for jobs and then beginning your career. I know you said to me that your first job where you were interviewed for Trivial Pursuit, which is a game, well-known game, board game, which we all love. Um, you entered into the marketing field, but you felt almost like you had imposter syndrome when you first started this job.
yeah, it was interesting because,
Mm,
it's in the days where it was very different then, certainly in the UK, where, you would look in the local newspaper for,
mhm,
whatever positions were coming up. And of course, as a mother, I wanted part-time work. So
mhm.
I was always drawn to the part-time section. And this position came up, which sounded really interesting. And um, I had started work in a local leisure centre. So I'd already started to gain confidence in my abilities, if you like.
Mhm.
And but the ad never said, it felt like a marketing company, but I really liked the way that the whole thing was worded. So I literally just picked up the phone, asked to speak to the HR manager, had a, had a chat with her, and she said, "You sound very interesting. I'd love to meet you. Come in and see me." So I said, "Well," and I knew the building as well. So I
Mhm.
thought, well, it's quite a prestigious building as well.
Mhm.
So I thought, well, nothing ventured, as we all know, nothing gained. So I
Mhm.
went along, and there were these, I was going into reception and up the stairs, and I thought, I saw these pictures of Trivial Pursuit. It must be the marketing company. And in actual fact, it was the marketing company, except for the fact that Trivial Pursuit, the owners of Trivial Pursuit, resided within the building. So when I
Ah.
had my interview, she said, "Oh, have you guessed who we might be?" And I said, "Well, clearly marketing." And she said, "Well, no." She said, "We are actually the owners of Trivial Pursuit. Our company name is Horn Abbott." So
Oh.
at that point, I really had to stop myself from falling off the chair. And then it was, what am I doing here?
Mhm.
And then thought, don't make a fool of yourself. Just be calm
Mhm.
and just get through this. It was a bit like, when you go for a driving test, you just
Mhm.
have to get through it. It's so painful, but
Mhm.
anyway, she was really friendly and nice, and I just did my best. And not for one moment ever thinking that I had even the slightest chance of getting this job. And then that was on the Monday. On the Friday, I had a call from them to say that we'd like to offer you the job. And I was absolutely aghast. And
Fantastic.
I think I said something like, well, I'm just leaving to go for another interview. And they said, well, are you still going? And I said, well, clearly not. And they said, great, we'll come in on Monday and, we'll have a chat before you start. So, yeah. And then imposter syndrome, I went straight over to see my sister and I said, oh my God, they've given me this job. What am I going to do? And I couldn't remember what I said in the interview. And yeah, but it was, it turned out to be just the most amazing experience.
Well, what you said, I mean, is this where you set up 6 European offices? Was that one, or was that for a different job?
No, from Trivial Pursuit. Sadly, they they took my, after I'd been there just over a couple of years, they took my position, which grew actually within Trivial Pursuit, to Barbados, which is where their
Oh,
head
sweet.
office resided,
Ah, that's right.
and
You told me.
invited me along. But of course, with 2 children and having just recently met my now husband,
Mhm.
then it wasn't the right time. So yeah, I had to make the difficult decision. Had
Yeah.
I been single, I don't think wild horses would have dragged me away. But because I had such a great recommendation from Trivial Pursuit, then I was offered a position in British Telecom, which I loved. And then another position came up in the energy industry,
Mm.
and I decided to take that one, even though I loved my job at BT. There was something about the energy business that was really exciting. So that is when I joined them at the time when deregulation was just happening here in the UK. And then they were moving into Europe. And then I was given the opportunity to open 6 European offices, the first of which was Milan.
Of
So,
course.
yeah. So it's like, well, you'll be okay. You speak the language. I
Uh,
don't think that was the only criteria, but it was important. Yeah, so that was just that was an adventure for a year. Yeah, just setting up those offices and the whole excitement of all of that was beyond
amazing.
beyond expectations. Yeah.
Beyond expectations. And I just feel like, from that small ad that you saw in the newspaper,
Yeah.
um, learning your Italian, and as we start to see this lovely circling effect going on in your life, I know that sometimes for everyone, we learn skills and things that we don't think we'll ever use again, and they're going to pop up like they did for you. They just pop up. And I I wanted to also, based on that, go into your Italian and how this came to fruition even more in your career as you started to grow more and more in this.
Yeah, well, it kind of started with all the 6 officers really, because
Hmm.
what we very quickly realized was that there was an awful lot of cultural diversity and cultural differences
Hmm.
that we needed to address. And there is a really funny story, which I don't have time to explain now, but 2 of our senior execs called me to a meeting one day and just said, we're going to Milan, and it's all about building confidences with local business people. Could you please give us some idea of how we should behave and what we could say and what we can't say? And that was really interesting, because everything that I advised them, when they came back, they told me that everything had happened. So it wasn't even about speaking Italian, because in Italy English is the second language. So professionally, they speak better English than we do
Hmm.
very often. Um, you know, they speak the proper English, whereas we kind of cut corners sometimes. So you do have to be a bit careful. But they came back and they said, you know what, Maria, everything you said to us was true, and it really helped. So then we started to look at, the cultural diversity within each of the offices. So there was, Milan, Paris, Stockholm, Warsaw, Prague, Dusseldorf, all of those. And so my role just grew and grew and grew. And what was happening at that time was that I was gaining a lot of confidence from the country managers who were all English that were sent over there to run these businesses. So we were having, in-depth conversations, personal conversations, either in the car on the way to the airport or on the flight or whilst I was over there. And I came back and I said to, my line manager, these guys and girls are having a really tough time away from their families, and they're sharing so much with me that I feel I should help them in some way, and I can't. And that's when she said, we'll get you some coach training. So the coach training then happened within the corporate world. So I had some NLP training, some coach training, and I was then able to help them in a way that they could help themselves.
Great.
So that's where the coaching side of my...
And that was going to be one of my questions. So this is great. You started diving into coaching through the corporate world. And it makes total sense, since you were trying to coach everybody else on how to, on the diversity and how to manage. So this was obviously the start. And what was it that you loved about it as you started to get more training? And you're really well experienced. You've had so many coaching qualifications here. What was it that really attracted you to coaching?
Well, something that I've kind of stepped over is that the company really helped me to develop further and sent me to university. So basically, they sent me to take my HR qualification. So I did get to university in the end.
Yeah, I love that.
And that was a 3-year program. So very intensive around human resource development. So, and it was, one of the managers, who was a great mentor, also just said, this is right up your street, because they could see things were going to get difficult. So having a qualification would really help me. So it was about really giving me some credibility.
So wait a minute. So let's just backtrack a bit. You were at work and you were studying and you had the kids. Is that right?
Yeah, by this time they were teenagers, so not easy.
Oh, wow. And you were in a new relationship, or were you married?
Yeah. We were, So yeah, Andrew and I
you
were
were doing a lot.
Yeah. But it just doesn't all happen at once. One of the things that I know to be true, and also my sons now are grown up and they give me great feedback. And what they've said is that the communication in the family was always it was always there. It was always there. So, whenever I got an opportunity, we always ate together. That's like the Italian thing.
The Italian way.
Yeah. So we always ate together. And, I would say to them, well, look, this opportunity's come up and I really need your help. I really need your support, because I can't travel and worry about you guys here.
Right. Yeah.
I need you to not let me worry. And so the boys were in the kitchen with me and learning to cook, and just easy dishes like spaghetti and, just really easy dishes. So that, I would always leave something, but if I also wanted them to take responsibility and accountability for themselves, and not, not be beholden to whoever they met to cook for them. And
good for you. Very good for you. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of mums are doing that these days, but I think it's so important for these young men to be trained in that way. Good for you. And so forwarding on, we're now, you're degreed, you're in HR, you're moving on. What was it that made you decide you wanted to create your own company?
Well, sadly, I say sadly, it was sad at the time, because we were part of such a great, company. When you're really successful, bigger companies like to swallow you up. So that's what happened. So a really big energy company, a German, came in and just basically decided that they wanted to buy us out. So many of us had dealings with this larger company and just thought, we really don't want to work for a bigger organization. And they didn't want the European side either. So it was a no-brainer for me. I've been thinking, people have said to me, you should work for yourself. You'd be brilliant working for yourself. And the corporate world seduces you because you have all the business travel, and you have all the trappings of that you get, the car, the phone, everything. And there's a part of you that thinks, well, who am I without this company, behind me?
Exactly. You've got all that safety, and you've got the protection and the regular salary. And let's just jump into that, because we know as business owners that there's an ebb and a flow, and sustainability is always the top of the list as a priority. Um, how did you do this? How did you get your clients? I mean, you started your company 2004. Um, who was your first client?
Well, my first client was actually my line manager, who had been my mentor for many years, and she was female. She had said to me, so you've decided to leave the company. What are you going to do about coaching externally?
Right.
Because it's very different coaching externally than it is internally. And people will pay you a lot of money to not agree with them and to challenge them. So you need more skills. So I said that was a path I definitely wanted to take, because a really good marriage with my HR development side, and coaching. And she agreed. So there was some funding that I could apply for and got
Great for you.
for the training.
Yeah.
So I had nothing to lose, and everything to gain. And one of the other things that she recommended that I do was to get in touch with some of our suppliers, our companies that were already working with us,
Right.
some of whom I knew, and seeing if they would be prepared, to offer me a position as an associate. And they did. So
They did. Just like that.
yeah, they were like, good grief, you're from TXU, of course you come work for us, because
Amazing.
and that reputation,
Yeah. Proceeded.
proceeded at that time. So it did work, although the fear was, I won't have this anymore. It was actually really helpful.
Yeah.
To begin my journey. And I left, it was like a Friday or whatever, and by the Tuesday I was already running a first workshop, for an organization that, it was mad, really.
It was magic.
But exciting. Yeah, exciting.
Yeah.
And lots of encouragement, from those around me as well, both,
Right.
professionally and personally.
A lot of encouragement. I love that when we all get together and we promote each other, and we're there, really helping each other build our skills. And I think women do that very well. I'm in a group right now, WBs they're called, and I'm just astounded by how the women just support each other and are always looking for each other for opportunities and potential. And I think we're so good at networking, and it's very important. In fact, I was on with a client yesterday in a session, and it's a he's running his own business, and I said, who's your community? Who are you working with for yourself, so you're getting guidance and input from people similar to you? And he goes, I don't have a network. I said, you really need a network for everybody, so everyone's listening and they've got their own business. It's so important to have a network, because you're marketing to that network, but you're also supporting that network. There's lots of guidance and interaction, and it's super supportive, especially when things are difficult, right, and challenging. And when you're on your own, running your own business, you can feel quite isolated. So having that community is so important. And it's so good to hear that you just went straight from that role, you went into another one. I mean, this is the beauty of corporate, and having that background is huge. Okay, so I'm leading up to you going to Italy.
Yeah.
Going back to Italy, circling back to Italy. It's beautiful Italy keeps coming up in our thread.
Yeah, it was always on my radar. And what was interesting was, every time I ran a workshop or, with my coaching clients, if I even mentioned that I, was Italian and came from Italy and was born to Italian parents, they would suddenly, it was like the topic of interest. Oh, I've been to Italy and I love the food and I love the people. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then I really became very passionate about, this was also in the corporate world, about empowering women. And I thought, I need to take women to Italy. And I need to take them to a place where they can where there's no agenda and they can just be themselves and they can find themselves and they can be with other women, and I can take them through a process where they have never ventured to go before.
Mm-hmm.
And so my retreats in Italy were born. Again, those same questions. Where are you going to run these retreats? How are you going to do it? Where are what location you go? All those questions that people were asking me. And I just said, I just have to research it and trust that the right place will appear. And it did. In this beautiful valley in Le Marche, in
Mm-hmm.
Italy, which is just above Puglia, or Puglia, as some people
Puglia,
call it.
as I
So
call
it's
it.
Puglia. And so it's like in Tuscany. So it's like a rustic Tuscany. It's not so manicured as
Nice.
Tuscany.
Yeah.
So you can really, feel the energy there. So I ran 5 retreats in Italy, 4
Mm-hmm.
women. And each one was very, very different. And I always co-led. So I always ran them with someone.
Yeah.
So I learned from them also.
Mm-hmm. Always very sensible to do. And you were in Italy, you were running your retreats, and I also want to hear more about, as you were empowering women and empowering yourself basically as well. Um, when you were in Italy and you joined that wonderful group of women called the Professional Women's Association in Rome.
Yeah.
Tell us about that
So,
story.
so what happened was, as I was in Italy running all these retreats, suddenly my husband he was offered a position in Italy, in Naples, working for NATO, which
Wow.
came completely out of the blue. Yeah, completely out of the blue. Which was, it's only an hour away from my family there. So that, the universe just gives. Sometimes you're like, wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that we would go. It was between 2 and 5 year contract, I guess you would call it. So we thought, yeah, we'll do it. Our boys by this time had, flown the nest, one in Australia, one in London. So we were free. And so we did it. And as I was approaching being there, I was on LinkedIn and just doing a bit of a research around what networking groups there were that I could join. And PWA, Professional Women's Association, popped up. So I spoke to the chairman there and said, I'm moving to Italy soon. I would love to be able to, come to one of your groups. So I went along to one of the groups once we were there, and decided that was the group for me, the network for me. It wasn't just Italian women. It was women from various different cultures and background, Russian, Polish,
Wow.
Swedish. Yeah.
Nice.
And they were really well set up and very well supported, very well funded. And they asked me to join their board, which I did.
You always sound so surprised. It cracked me up. They asked me to join the board. Can you imagine?
I'm like, seriously? And they're like, oh, yes. And then, when I became part of the board, I then realized that they needed some help too. So then I was, I said, would you like me just to run like a 1-day workshop? And they're like, yes, we were hoping you were going to say that. So, it was just the most wonderful journey. And, learning from them and also them getting to know me, then surprisingly, another surprise, bolt out of the blue, they said, oh, we'd like you to represent us at the International Coaching Federation conference at the Olympic Stadium in Rome.
Mm.
So then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, I can't possibly do that. And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, well, my Italian's not good enough, limiting belief all over again.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you talking about? Of course your Italian's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I agreed to do it with their support, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was there, I was just totally transparent with this group of men and women in front of me, and just explained, I said, I was born in the UK. I have lived on and off in Italy, and my Italian is not as perfect as I'd like it to be. So, please allow me that at least. And because, the Italians, they're very precise.
Hmm.
They like things just so.
Hmm.
So they were so generous and so kind.
Hmm.
And at the end of, my talk, one woman stood up, first of all, clapping, and then they all did. So yeah.
Ah, standing ovation. Standing ovation for you, and you overcame your limiting belief. I mean, it's quite something to stand up when and do a presentation in a different language. I mean, I speak French, but I don't think I could do a business presentation in French.
I
You
didn't
know,
think so either.
yeah, that's extraordinary. And in Rome, at the Olympic Stadium as well, where you were at, I mean, just extraordinary. You've gone from really not knowing what your career was going to be in your early 20s to now standing up in Rome doing a business presentation in Italian. How many years was that did it take to go from that job at Trivial Pursuit to Rome? Was it
Oh,
20? Was it 15? I mean, I'm trying to work it
oh
out.
my gosh. Well, that was, yeah, it was like uh, about 30 years.
Wow. That's very impressive, Maria. Very impressive. I mean, you strike me as someone who's um, always focused on opportunity and very curious, and that's what helps you also with your mindset, your growth mindset too. And you're such a great inspiration to hear these stories from difficult challenges as we all have to what am I going to do next? Worry, fear, to faith in yourself, knowing that you can, and then to building that. And it sounds like you've had people on your way who've also mentored you and seen it in you to inspire you. And I think it's so important for all of us to ask people around us, what do you see in me? What are the qualities that you see in me? What do you see as my strengths? What do you see as my weaknesses? And it's such useful feedback. And then just to keep going, even if you make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, keep going, you
Oh
know?
yeah, yeah. There was a few of those along the way, but there's, to my mind, there is no failed. There's only learning.
Right.
It's not about making the wrong decision, because you make that decision based on your circumstances at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And we ask our friends, we ask our family, what do you think? But there's this inner voice that we all have, our instinct that tells us, and we're born with that.
Yeah.
And learning to trust that, throughout my coach training, that's one of the big areas that we focused on, learning to trust our instincts with our
Yes.
clients and helping our clients to really, trust their instincts. And, people always say, my clients, when I'm coaching them, they said, do you know, it's so true. I knew I shouldn't have done that. I knew, I was going down the wrong path. Why did I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and we all do it.
Yeah,
So,
because
learning to trust your instincts, and especially if you have a coach who champions you around that. And that's what my job is as a coach, to say, is that really that scary? And they're like,
mm-hmm.
it's very scary. And it's like, good. It wouldn't be worth doing if it wasn't scary, because I've been there and it's been scary every step of the way. And
Mm-hmm.
then I thought, actually, it wasn't, when you're in it, it's like, actually, it wasn't that scary.
You had to be in it. I know, I always say face and embrace the fear, because once you've faced it, you're not you don't, it's nothing. It really is nothing. It's the anticipation of it. But as you said, once you're in it and doing it and moving forward, a little bit of discomfort is good for all of us, stretches us beyond belief, having those stretch goals, and then listening to that inner voice and really trusting it. And I think you're right. Well, I know you're right. The trust piece, trusting your inner voice, is so important. And so talking about inner voice, you trusted your inner voice to move to Cornwall in south of England just recently, where you are now beginning to run retreats in Cornwall. And Cornwall is one of my favorite places on the planet. Love Cornwall. So I'm hoping to come and see you very soon. But you're now running retreats there for women, empowering women.
Yeah. So again, my husband comes home and goes, I've been offered a job in Cornwall. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. So
Your husband.
Yeah, I know. It's just crazy because to be honest, we'd been, in the pandemic and in lockdown, we'd been watching this series about Cornwall, and I said, do you know, we've never been to Cornwall. I said, and we should go. Maybe when you retire, we'll spend some time there. And
Hmm.
anyway, the universe again was listening, and next thing I know, he's spoken to an old colleague from old times, and his friend said, well, there's a job here if you'd like it. So his reputation sort of precedes him too.
Uh-huh.
And
Sounds like it.
we thought, well, let's give it a go. So
Hmm.
anyway, long story short, he started his job here in Cornwall, and then we were right in the middle of all this lockdown.
Mm.
Properties were very, very rare. We came because we thought, well, we'll just rent, make it easy.
Hmm.
And we came down to Cornwall, and every single estate agent that we walked into their offices were like, oh, it's a bad time, it's a bad time. And I just said to him, I'm just not going to listen to all this negativity. I'm just not. I'm not.
Hmm.
Because we're meant to be there. For whatever reason, we're meant to be there. And then as I was looking through, I was online looking for properties while he was working. And this property came up that we're into
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
And it's a dream. It's a dream. It's an
Oh,
absolute dream house. It's a dream
beautiful.
house. It's a beautiful old farmhouse surrounded by 100 acres of land.
Oh.
We have a river at the bottom of the valley. There
Hmm.
are two houses beside me that are holiday lets.
Hmm.
And literally within the first couple of weeks that we were here, our landlady came over just to have a cup of tea and a chat with me. And she said, oh, do you know, we've been thinking about maybe running retreats here.
Hmm.
And again, I was like, she had no clue, no clue about me in that sense. So I let her finish and I said, well, you might like to know that I actually have run retreats. And she was just astounded.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Bingo.
honestly.
Magic.
And it's
Magic
crazy.
happening.
So yeah, we've talked about it. They're really keen. So yeah, obviously they will provide the containers, the houses,
Mm.
and I have a friend coming tomorrow, friend and colleague and co-coach.
Hmm.
She's coming tomorrow, and we are going to spend the day together. She's coming down from Suffolk,
Oh,
and we
yes.
are
We
going to
love
spend the day
Suffolk.
together. Yeah,
Hmm.
where
Yes.
I used to live.
Yes.
She's down here on holiday with her family,
Mhm.
but she's taken one day of that to come over and be with me. And yeah, we're planning retreats for later in the year.
Well, we're going to want to hear more about that, and I'm going to have you give your website in a moment. As we wrap up on this lovely story of yours and your life experiences, and I know that you have so much more, but giving us snapshots today and highlights of your life and how you've grown. Thank you. I just wanted to mention before we wrap up that I saw on your website Anita Roddick's quote, which I think is absolutely perfect based on everything that we've been talking about today. And for everyone who wasn't sure who Anita Roddick is, she used to own and run the Body Shop and is a very famous female business entrepreneur and owner. And the quote is, if you think you are too small to make an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito in the room.
Yeah, I love that. I
If you
love
think
Anita
you are
Roddick.
too small to make an impact, everybody listening, try going to bed with a mosquito in the room. And so, exactly, everybody out there listening, the courage to be brilliant is yours. And just as we heard from Maria, the experiences we've had in our lifetime, sometimes we're not quite sure where we're having those experiences, but they show up, and they show up to show us that they're going to support us. And they've actually provided a great foundation for us. And just as we saw with Maria and her story with the Italian thread throughout your journey, and also going into the unknown, the imposter syndrome, the why me? Can I do this? But she trusted every step of the way. And what nugget of wisdom would you like to share with us today, Maria?
I think I've said it already. Trust your instinct, trust your inner beliefs. There's something there that always guides you and takes you on the right path, and it served me very, very well, even when I've been so doubtful and I've had my saboteurs working overtime with me. Who do you think could you do that? Even moving to Cornwall, people were like, but it's the pandemic. You're
Mm.
moving to Cornwall in the pandemic. And I'm like, yeah, I
Of
am.
course. Yeah.
So,
So,
there's an awful lot around you that can make you feel the fear, like you said, feel the fear and do it anyway. And there's a great book about that.
mhm,
But it is about, does this feel right? And I would just like to say one thing that I think is absolutely crucial is journaling. Just
journaling.
journal.
Hmm.
Journal, journal, journal. And journaling is not a diary. It is about really recording your thoughts and your feelings, your fears, your happy days. I've literally just started every day, well, every other day, writing, what am I grateful for? Just
Hmm.
5 points. What am I grateful for? And really just understanding and acknowledging the great things in my life, even if it's, the other day I said, I really love where I live, and all those wonderful things. But then, I got some new nail polish, and I was like, I really love my new nail polish.
Hmm.
It's,
That's right.
what are you grateful for? What are you appreciating in life? What are
Hmm.
you, the tiniest little thing to the biggest thing.
Hmm. So thank you. That's a great nugget of wisdom to share. And never doubt your instinct. Always trust what you feel is right before you go to your head to figure out the how and the why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Going
Thank
to
you.
your head. Yeah. Going to your head
I
is
know.
secondary.
It's very
But thank
secondary.
you. Can I just take this opportunity to thank you for this wonderful opportunity? It's never
Oh.
easy just talking about yourself, but you've encouraged me to do that.
Mhm.
And I just really hope that it helps
Well,
so many other women in particular.
I think it
Thank
does. That's why I asked you to come on today because people love hearing everybody else's stories and behind the story of building a business and what it takes and the journey and the personal journey that it takes. And of course, your business is an extension of who you are. And, it really does mirror out to the world you as a person. And it takes a lot to run a business and to sustain it. And that takes a lot of willpower and motivation. And that's what we've seen with you today. So thank you for sharing it. And where can we find you, Maria? What's your website?
So my website is Maria at Strada Innovation. It's all one word.
Mhm.
.co.uk.
.co.uk. And of course, that information will be on the show notes for everybody who wants to look you up and find out more about what you're doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again very soon, hearing more about the retreat. Sounds fantastic. And thank you again, Maria. It's been lovely. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you too. And maybe even running a retreat together.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Let's
Do
do
it.
it. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to Your Unique Brilliance podcast. And if you want to define your brilliance and redefine your diamond potential, schedule a personal consultation with me to discover just how you can do that at nicolasalter.com. While you're there, make sure to subscribe to the show so you will never miss an episode. And if you found value in this show, I would appreciate a rating on iTunes or simply tell a friend. That would be amazing. You are amazing. Have an empowered week, everyone.